questions, committee reports of activities, member updates, action items, and then we will adjourn. I will take attendance and just ask if everyone's okay with the order of business this evening. Mr. Kendall?
Here, yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Terry?
Mike's on, please.
Here and yes.
Tina
Yes.
Fatanides is absent this evening, and so I will start by asking if there's anybody who's watching who is from the public and wants to leave a comment.
We have nobody on.
I don't see anybody.
Just as.
And there's nobody physically here in the audience, so I will move on to the first item on our administrative items, the 5th grade Camp Borndale trip. We got some information about that at the last meeting.
Yes, so thank you very much for offering us the opportunity to bring this back to you. I've been working with Ms. Loreniga and some teaching staff at Mendez to try and bring this important trip back. As you know, a few years ago, we had the opportunity to get a grant from the AEFI for a outdoor education overnight experience for our grade 5 students that wasn't able to take place because of COVID, and we would like to bring that opportunity back for our students. So hoping that we can get that approved tonight.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
Refresh my memory on why we didn't vote on it last time?
We didn't have,
We didn't have the documents.
at that point, we didn't have all the documents together. We were still waiting for some information from the busing company. So everything now is officially signed and approved with all of the numbers in order.
So everything from the nursing staff, so everybody's signed off on everything.
Yep.
Yep.
We just need a motion.
I move to approve.
I move to approve the 5th grade Camp Borndale trip as presented.
Second?
All in favor? Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I. Next up, the 8th grade Washington DC trip. I think that's you, Jim.
Yeah, I just want to preface things. Mr. DiGirolamo is actually out of state for the next couple of days. So we're not looking for any approval of a trip or anything at this point. But I do want to lay a foundation and have a conversation briefly here with regard to the trip and some concerns that we have as a district leadership team. And just as a preface, we haven't participated in the 8th grade DC trip since COVID began in 2020, and in looking at potentially bringing it back, last year we weren't comfortable. This year we have a number of concerns. I'll start with, we have about 247 8th grade students. Of the 247 students, we've got about 80, a little more than 80 actually, who are free and reduced students, where we would anticipate at least a partial scholarship, if you will, or funding for a number of students. The trip itself is well over $900 per student, and so we're looking at potentially having to fundraise scholarship money anywhere between $55,000 and $80,000 if we wanted to make the trip accessible for all students in that class. That's just one component. I have tremendous faith in this community that if there was a number to ensure all students could go, that this community has always stepped up in my 14 years and would continue to step up. But that also lays a practice that I'm not quite comfortable with in the future as well, expecting families to continue to pitch in for trips like this long term. The second component is we have, Mr. DiGirolamo has surveyed his teaching staff and nursing staff to discuss who would be interested, one, in helping actually organize. If you remember Mary Moyna, who retired, she was the one who organized this trip for a number of years, social studies teacher at the middle school. They currently do not have anyone who is stepping up to the plate and who wants to be the person in charge of organizing and getting the information squared away. Dave has been doing that, just all of the background. That being said, we have a need for about 20 chaperones is what we would need at minimum with that large of a class. 9 teachers at this point, faculty and staff at the middle school, has said they would have an interest. They wouldn't make a commitment, but there's an interest. That's well shy of what we would actually need to make this trip work. And one of the greater components is our nursing staff. We don't have school nurses who are willing to make the trip either. And there are lots of reasons for this, but as I've had conversations with other superintendents in the region, specifically Westwood, where they were very similar to us, they took this trip. They have not and are not moving forward with their trip, partly because they don't have the school chaperones who are willing to go on it, and the nursing staff. Our staff is younger, if you will, in terms of young kids at home. That's, leaving a week. They're not comfortable with that. Therefore, thanks, Paul. In our estimation, that this would make this trip really difficult to pull off. Again, aside from just the financial component, we just don't have the folks who are willing to do that. I've obviously reached out to Dave and said, how'd you feel about parent chaperones as opposed to teaching chaperones? And he's not comfortable. He's personally not comfortable with this at this point, not knowing the kids and where our teachers do. So that's where we are in terms of the thought process. There's been no decision. I want to be really clear at this point. But I didn't want this to linger in terms of a conversation that Dave might want to have with site council at the middle school level, with his teaching staff, potentially with parents, sending a message out to them. We do have to make some decisions, I don't want to say quickly, but in a timely manner, because we've got to get a contract signed, we've got to get deposits. Unlike COVID, where, if you remember, we actually, Chris and Barbara were fighting a lot to actually get some of the refunds from the DC trip initially. They will not, if we put a deposit down, we're not getting it back this time. That's going to be the bottom line. They will not, because there's no reason why we couldn't go on the trip. So again, I don't know, more than anything, I just wanted to be upfront and with you all and the community, and not that many people are watching this, but certainly a message. Esmer and I and Dave have had conversations about how we message the concerns we're having about running the trip. And it was sort of my opportunity to bring it to you tonight. If you want to ask questions, provide me with some things that you might want us to look into. Certainly I'm willing to do that. Part of the concern that we have is, excuse me, is that if we promise this trip and we can't pull it off with our staffing, it makes it really, that's not a fun thing either. I'd rather have a decision made, excuse me, I'd rather have a decision made well in advance so families know what to expect. I'll leave it there and open up for questions. I apologize.
So we think we have
80 free and reduced. What did we previously do? And we had this situation. Obviously, the numbers weren't as big, but like how were.
Move your mic towards you. It's facing.
You all right? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good.
So the numbers of kids that we might need to support with scholarship, what have numbers been like previously, and how did we accomplish it?
I don't, excuse me. I don't know the exact numbers, Aaron, but it's been smaller. And I want to also preface this. Not all kids go, right? Some families decide they don't want their children to go. That being said, when we start hand-picking teachers from different grade levels, we're also talking about impacting the educational, curriculum of the 6th grade and the 7th grade. And these students who deserve to have their teacher in front of them are gone for a week, and it's impacting that grade level. So the chaperoning component, I failed to mention that, but if we're pulling from different grade levels, it's negatively impacting the educational experience of the other students, right? The 8th graders who stay behind are supposed to come to school, but again, there are no 8th grade teachers. They're not getting an educational experience when they're there. But it's been a small number. This is an anomaly probably in the number, but we're seeing more and more students who are falling under that category of need, right? But this just happens to be the largest class in the district. Mike, you had these kids, and he knew then, at that point in time, that it was a class that needed tremendous financial support.
Okay.
I think in the past, Aaron, maybe like there were donations that were quietly made, you know, and
Sure.
I think they found a way to, the kids who wanted to go, for the most part, could go. But this is a whole different category of financial commitment. I think that would be needed.
They have about $9,000 set aside for this trip.
That they could apply
That they
to
could
that.
apply.
But I mean,
You
to
said
me,
80.
the bigger concern is, I mean, if that was the only problem, I feel like we could probably address it. You know, I think it's a bigger problem that, you know, we could win $1 million in the lottery and apply it, but if no one's taking them and chaperoning, that's more of a concern for me at this point, where you've said
Right.
no one's willing to run it and there's not enough people to chaperone it. And I think if the majority of chaperones are parents having chaperoned trips, that's not, you need people that know the kids, that understand the dynamics, that have authority over these children, you know, that, you know, the kids respect and will listen to it. And that age group too, you know, is tricky,
Yeah.
can be.
I appreciate all that. It's
Yeah.
sad to think about. Like, I went on that trip.
I know.
Back then, it was the 7th grade.
Yeah.
And the highlight was always like they had a panoramic camera, and one student got chosen to be at like both ends, and they ran behind the people.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you don't do that anymore. But
It's a big tradition, yeah.
there were parents that chaperoned when I went, a few, and it's specifically parents that were medical staff. So a couple different nurses.
Yeah.
But I can also understand, and we're also seeing, you know, more behaviors. These kids are coming out of COVID. It's a much probably tougher group to manage. That said, I have heard parents that, from certain groups of parents, that really want to make it happen.
Couple questions, and I guess one is, you know, to the staff, has this been presented at this point to staff to say, look, you know, we've asked for people who might be interested. We're really at a breaking point on this. It's not going to happen, you know, unless more people choose to step up, and they've decided for whatever reason. I'm not trying to be critical of the decision making, but just, you know, are we at that point so that people understand that the trip won't happen if, I shouldn't say won't, but that it's unlikely to if there aren't more chaperones that step up?
I would say by the middle of next week, we will have that more definitive answer with staff.
Okay.
Dave, I talked to Dave this week before he left. He had done an initial survey. That's what we have right now, are 9 folks out of the entire staff. And
that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers?
That's correct.
Right, okay.
3 8th grade teachers only, 3 unified arts teachers, and 3 from the 6th and 7th grade.
And then I guess the other question I have is, if we've looked at this in the past, like how long a trip is it, and you know, is it viable to consider something that would be shorter that might make people more interested in chaperoning or more willing to, and it might also, I assume, reduce the cost by some margin?
So, good question, and I don't know if DC is the option versus doing something more local, right, with our students. Some communities have moved away from DC and taken a day trip to New York City, things like that, and not made it an overnight trip, which then makes it affordable, and staff more willing to do that. I will be upfront. There are still concerns with COVID. There are still concerns with being on a bus. With students and other adults, and for that long period of time. When talking to Westwood, they were weighing the benefit of 20 hours on the bus, overall down and back, right, versus how many hours were they actually in DC,
Right.
getting the experience of what you want, which is 2.5 days, and or spending 2 full days on a bus as well. So are there opportunities that might be more beneficial academically, as well as, creating a new experience for our kids? Yeah, there probably are, but I don't think those have been fully vetted, Mark.
Okay, and I guess, so what I'm hearing is that the total duration of the trip really is 2 full days of travel and 2.5 days of actually
Yep.
being there. So
Exactly.
shortening that doesn't really make any sense pragmatically. And just one last question. Do you have a sense of what the cost was pre-pandemic compared to now? And I'm just curious more than anything
I want to
else.
say, you know what, I did ask Dave that question. It was closer to this $500 to $600 range.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was
Yeah.
what I was going
Yeah.
to
Like it's
guess.
almost
Yeah.
doubled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
Dave said it has almost doubled. So
Yeah, so you know how I feel
I do,
about this, and you know, of the things we've talked about losing in the past, and things that having the kids graduate from our district and not and just DC being a spot on the map. And my kids have been there; they'll go again. But it's, and when we talk about that increased need for the financial assistance, that makes me double down on that, because that means we have more students that are unlikely to actually go down there and make it a place they visited, and at a time where we're so detached. The government isn't us; it's them. It's this other place. It's where these people, you know, argue with each other and act ridiculous, and they do that there. But we're only breeding more detachment when we don't ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to go down there. So I guess one of my questions to you is there, does changing the grade that goes to something in the high school have any material impact? So now you have students that are a little older. I don't know if the chaperoning requirements are different. The staff would be more. You know, I don't know.
Athletics doesn't like it.
I don't care.
Oh, I'm not saying I
And
care.
this-
I'm saying-
and the same
Yeah.
for the same reason why the negative impact, if it was some 6th grade teachers, well, guess what? The benefit, they're going to get that benefit 2 years later, right? So I'm not as concerned about that, and it's, you know, we've certainly have absorbed impacts from lots of different things lately.
sure have.
But so, I mean, I'd really love to see if, because and switching to something local, going to New York City, I'm like, that's great. Go down there to do whatever. But we talk about civics, we talk about engagement.
Sure.
And this is the one thing that, like I said, particularly if we have larger students on free and reduced lunch and in that economic situation, those are the kids we need to get down there,
Yep.
right? Our kids are going to get down there, right? If they haven't already, right? And they're going to go multiple times. So I'd really love for us to try to figure out, because we also have high school students that now miss the trip.
Yep.
So I don't know if that changes, if there's anything that benefits from looking at it differently like that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's certainly worth having a conversation with Kelly and the staff at the high school to think, you know, would it be something they'd be interested in the future? Certainly not something we could pull off.
No,
It's
yeah.
fresh.
No, I know, and
Freshman
I'm not.
trip instead.
I know you're not asking that,
Yeah.
Paul.
What are
That-
the high school history classes?
Sorry, Jim, what are the high school history classes? What are they, like, in each grade?
So freshman year, they walk into world history. Sophomore and junior year, U.S. history. Then senior year becomes an elective of some sort. It could be, and again, it varies. I mean, you have AP Euro as a sophomore. You've got, you know, AP World as a senior. You've got AP American history, sophomore, junior year again. You know, junior year. So it varies, but then psychology, a bunch of electives, little half year electives. But that being said, I can certainly tell you staff would be hesitant to go on a trip right now, all across the entire district. It's not just the middle school.
Yeah, so for me.
I mean, even to Borndale, we're hearing, you know, it's a different scenario at Borndale because of the way it's designed.
Right.
In terms of the staffing at Borndale is responsible for our kids at night, et cetera.
No, I mean, right now, it's taking a while for everyone to get, you know, their head in a different space relative to COVID. It's just taking a long time because we were in it for a long time, right? So I'm more looking at, you know, you asked about the cost. The cost of travel right now is pretty high, right? So I'm assuming that it can't stay high forever, right? So, you know, so I'm going to assume this year we can't do it, right? We can't pull it off for all the reasons you mentioned. But I don't want to assume that there's not a possibility, because at least from my perspective, this is one of the ones that we should try not to lose. And Westwood can make their own decision,
No, I understand.
and that's
Yeah.
fine. But so if there's possibility that, hey, you know, 2 years from now, the cost is more reasonable, we're in a different space from a staffing perspective as it relates to chaperoning, then, you know, I'd like to make sure we're trying to do that, because I still think that the kids that missed out, you know, I'd
Sure.
love to try to get them there, but we're going to probably be missing them because they'll be graduating by the time we're probably doing.
I think a fair number is 1 to 10 ratio, to be honest with you. I don't care how old the kids are or not. High school kids, you know, even on a trip to Italy, you know, that our kids are going on in the spring. I think it's probably 1 for every 12. And that's, you know, at that high school level. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate a lot of Paul's comments and tend to agree. I mean, I know I did that trip in 8th grade and from a different school system, and still very strong impressions and memories from that. And it was a much smaller group. It was not the school-wide thing. It was 25 kids or something like that. And you know, I think from an educational perspective, it might be one of the most important places that any student growing up in this country should see. And so, you know, from that perspective, while I agree with Paul, it doesn't seem like it's likely that we're either ready as a district, and I mean that collectively, ready to go back to that trip. You know, it feels like we ought to think about it as a decision for this school year, and think about when we deal with the budget, you know, whether we have to think about something different for next year and really say this is a part of our social studies curriculum. I'm not trying to reach a decision on that right now, but it's something to be but to be mindful of, and not just sort of say, well, you know, now it's officially dead.
Yep.
For the long term. And you know, I don't know where we'll go with that kind of conversation. Obviously, we have lots of different priorities and things we have to allocate a certain amount of resources to, but it feels like that's where we're at.
Okay.
Well, and as we talk about the Italy trip, right? What about changing the dynamic of this trip and not being an 8th grade, a 9th grade trip, but if it's a trip that's opened up, and say for the high school, and so anyone in the 4 years can go, and you don't have to go at a certain year. You know, there may be some flexibility there, and maybe taking a smaller groups or something like that. We could afford flights as opposed to,
Right.
you know, spending 2 days on a bus, because that's, you know.
Okay.
Has anybody explored the overnight Amtrak?
It's actually more expensive. I mean, I have personally.
Yeah.
So more expensive than a bus, for sure.
Also harder to control kids on a train than a bus.
You get 200 plus kids on
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But you decrease the driving time.
You do,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
okay. Okay. Well, again, it was just more. I wanted to put it on your radar, and certainly, you know, when Dave is back, we'll continue to have the conversation, and I think even maybe Mike, when you meet with, you know, the social studies folks, maybe that's something you can bring up from a curriculum standpoint to say how much we value this and how important it is, and maybe they have some suggestions. So I think that's, you know, it's a good suggestion. Great. Okay, thank you. You know, the Debbie Downer discussion, right? The next component is the strategic plan discussion, and what we're looking to do coming out of here, and it's not necessarily us taking a lot of time for frame of reference for folks at home and watching this at a later time. We had a 4-hour workshop on Monday. We've been working with Hazard Young, Atea and Associates since July to work through our strategic plan, and we're at a point where we want to present to the community potential vision statements and getting feedback. And so one of the things that is on the agenda tonight is we worked Monday, worked through a couple vision statements. Our consultants would like us to be able to, hammer down something to at least share with the community to get feedback. It doesn't mean it has to be the final product, but one vision statement's better. If we want to go with 2, that's fine. Certainly, I'll pull up on the screen the 2 that we had discussed. We actually had a third one that we combined things. But what I'd like to do is be able to come out of here with the consensus that at least, and I know Tina's not here, but at least that we can present to the community as a starting point so we can start getting feedback.
So first, does anybody have any feeling about how many statements we want to present?
I really don't want to, so if we're going to get feedback, if you look at it from a process perspective, you take, a lot of different ideas and you kind of boil them down to a certain point. And then I think that's the right time to go out where there's still, more to talk about and more to get feedback on than if we get down and narrow it down to a concise one single statement. We're not giving them much to comment on, right? So I'm in favor of taking the 2 that we had on Monday, those 2 that we were kicking around, and looking to potentially combine and getting the feedback on both of them, because then we'd be like, okay, what resonated with them? Was it this statement? Was it this? It might be like 2 statements from one and 1 statement from another, and it helps us to. But if we combine it down too much, we're not really giving them much to comment on. Now, we don't want to obviously have, 10 statements, but I think the 2 they were, those 2 were I think a good amount, for me at least, a good amount to say, all right, well, what resonates with the staff? We're including staff in this statement very intentionally that we wasn't in the last statement. So how do the staff feel about it? What's going to make them feel like, yeah, I'm part of this statement? Because the way that it was done in the 2 were very different, and one might resonate more with the staff than another, and that should matter. Not that we're including them, but that they're going to feel that they're included in an important part of that vision statement. So that's where I wouldn't want to try to pare it down much more before we get feedback and then do that work.
I'm okay putting 2 statements that we kind of.
I actually was more, Paul, when you start talking, I thought you were pointing towards 1. you twisted on me, or at least I had thought it from the beginning. I was leaning more towards 1, but I think it does matter how it's communicated out, because my fear is if we have 2, it becomes which one do you like more, as opposed to what I think we're really looking for is kind of constructive feedback. Like, this isn't about wordsmithing, it's about substance, I think, when we're asking for the feedback. And so my thought would be that because I think the different versions we have are really substantively very similar, that presenting one as a draft statement, but trying to elicit feedback and asking more specific questions. And I don't know if that's the way Matt and Prem do it. And so that's kind of a...
Yeah, so I remember asking them, like, okay, you're not just going to say, you like this, and they're like, no, it's going to be a textual response to, I like this, and so... And that's why I was comfortable with the 2, because it's not like you like this one, that one. Yeah. Because like if we're talking about, either the staff or the culture or whatever, it's like, do you like it, said like this, or and so because we all think we're saying very similar things in those 2 statements, but I could see people reading them and feeling very different about what we're saying are important in them. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, my instinct would have been one, it's not something I have a strong opinion on. Excuse me, and certainly if others have a strong opinion in favor of two, I'm fine with that. But,
My
Madam
instinct
Chair?
was one also, only because I do feel, Paul, like even if one went out, I guess the kind of feedback that I was expecting was to let us know what's missing from that statement. Like, hey, you didn't include this, you didn't include that, or I don't like the way you said this, I don't, like, there's a lot of thought that goes into, this isn't quite right, but this is what I need, versus when you give two, we're just gonna get the one that they prefer of the two, instead of like really, I mean, it's probably gonna be all variations of what we're all talking
Yeah.
about, right? Like, some people are just gonna be A or B, and other people are gonna rewrite the whole thing, and,
I think it's about how it's communicated, like you said,
Yeah.
Mark. If it's just choose A or B, no, that's not what we're asking, right? You know, for example, for me, I think they read very differently. And the reason why the one that I put out there was phrased and constructed that way was because when we had the previous conversation at our school committee meeting,
yeah,
culture was really what we said that was the foundation for everything,
right,
right?
yeah,
And so having that, and then the feedback that we got from the survey about safe and those things, the
Right.
way that, so I read them as you know, getting feedback of which gives them, which resonates more. I think I can say similar things this way or this way, which way resonates with them, I think, is also important. I don't think they're, from our perspective, I don't think they're materially, or at least our intention, materially all that different. We're trying to communicate similar things, but I think it's all in, you know, making sure that if we put out two, it's not, and say, we are not asking you just to choose, you know, we're saying, you know, if you think you like this one better, what is it about, you know, and then even list out the topical things we put as a priority: culture, diversity, you know, the different things that we've talked about in that, and when we solicit the feedback, so we're getting.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, so when we decide, I mean, I will forward this on to Prem and Matt, they will craft that survey, they'll send it to us and get our approval before we send it out to ensure, Paul, that it is meeting the needs that we're looking for in terms of the
yeah.
statement.
And I heard him explain how it would be presented,
Yeah.
and I was comfortable with
Yep.
that. And honestly, I would not object to two at all. It was just my initial instinct was one, just to more keep it simple.
Can-
Yeah,
No, I was just saying, from what I was listening, you know, to the other night and when we had the conversation here a couple weeks ago, I certainly think the first one and the third one are two that resonated in terms of what we've been talking about for a couple weeks. And, you know, but that being said, I think they're all really solid. It's just how do we, you know.
Yeah, so I did want to say, like, again,
This isn't what we had on the board on Monday.
This is what he sent me.
yeah, we had switched some words and,
so I'm sorry, one of the things that we were talking about at the end was,
That's not the first.
so
No, that's because none of them are even close to when I sent them.
the thing we were talking about towards the end of our time on, what was it, just Monday, was fiddling around with some of the wording in that first one. And I did take a crack at that, which I kind of like a little bit more, so I do want to
yeah. let's
share
hear it.
that. I can give, for those of you who read better,
Read better than what?
read better than hear than listen.
Do you need to
Read better
see
than a
it, or
first
do you need
grader.
to hear it?
You-
Are you a visual learner?
Should be one per person. So, so it just says APS is a model district, right? We talked about sort of starting with that single strong statement. And then we had looked at the words. There was the word collaborative was in the prior draft in that first sentence. And we were fiddling around a little bit with sort of where was the culture component? Did it belong where it was? And so I tried to just synthesize sort of really the second and third sentences into I guess maybe it was first and second, into something a little bit different, just so it reads, we are inclusive, welcoming, and innovative culture, and we are in which our diverse staff helps students develop, was a difference in phrasing. I think it said provide before, and I felt like provide almost sounded like we were handing out goods, and it just kept, it didn't sit right with me. So this was kind of the tweak to it, was the staff helps students develop or something like that, but the rest of it's all the same as what we talked about last time. So just as my effort to tweak a little bit. I don't know if it makes it better, worse, or just different, but yeah.
I do like this better than the ones presented because this is short and sweet and still says all the same things.
Yep.
But however, for number 2 though, maybe Paul's longer one that kind of combined the two, yours and Tina's ideas could be the second one, so that people are choosing between, do you like a shorter one, do you like one that says a little more?
So can we?
Can you read yours again, Paul, or I can?
Send it to me, I'll put it on the board.
Okay.
I already
I was
did.
gonna
Huh? You just did?
Yeah, I already did. Check your email.
When I tried to rewrite mine, rewrite it, Mark, as I was sitting here, I did very, similar to what you did. Like, I put a period at the end of model district,
Yeah,
I like that, coming right out with that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, like, I know you two, like, I don't like that.
Yeah, I know.
It's so,
That's why we're sending it out to the community.
I mean,
too
I think it flows better if it says,
So this is the one, Paul.
I have it too, I think you emailed it.
yeah, yeah. No, that was the
Yeah.
second, that was the,
one, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think that, I would be in favor of sending those 2 out.
The two that are up there, or
The one that you just read. and
Yeah,
then-
so
and then Paul's. I
I would replace the other one with
Yes.
yours, right?
Yeah.
So the one
I
that's
like how you
bold
boiled
and the
it
one you
down.
just did.
The only thing, Mark, on yours is, and I know you've nixed collaborative, but inclusive and welcoming, are they too similar? Or would you put a different?
At first I left all 4, and I'm like, 4's too many,
No, you
right?
should always do 3.
Right. And so I was looking at, like, how do these things overlap? And I thought about exactly that point of
Well,
inclusive,
For
welcoming.
me, inclusive and welcoming are 2 different things.
Same.
Yeah.
Inclusive means I've opened the door for you. Welcoming means you want to walk through it,
Yeah.
right?
I thought about it but not with the terminology. I was thinking about it as inclusive to me is really a commitment to being an inclusive culture in the way we talk about it in DEI terms. Welcoming was more an environmental statement for me, in terms of,
I see it that way too, Mark.
sort of like a warmer place.
Yep.
Yeah.
More generic. So that's the way I think about it.
Yeah,
And I thought about
I
collaborative as
agree.
just
I feel like
being.
inclusive is more of a commitment and welcoming is more of a.
Yeah, inclusive
personality.
talks about us. Welcoming is
The feeling.
the feeling that
You'll
others
feel
should
comfortable
have.
Yeah.
Right, it talks about the work we're doing here, and then how does that translate to, so I do think they're different enough.
And I just thought the collaborative in sort of, in some ways, was the weakest word, because it was so narrow compared to these other
Well,
ones, and it was
and-
also kind of embedded in these
And,
concepts anyway.
and it's not directed enough. What does it mean to be collaborative? Collaborative
We work
with who?
together.
Yeah, with who, but
Okay.
what, it's like,
Just you and
Are
me,
you
Paul.
guys okay with sending those 2 out with,
Yeah,
as
just
long
read
as
this.
we are comfortable with the way it's presented in the survey?
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, I
What do
mean,
you
so-
guys think?
and-
I mean, this is a team effort here.
No, I'm good with it. I want to make
Yeah.
sure I have the right.
yeah, so I don't know where those.
It came right out of the shared folder.
Well,
I
Prem
just looked again.
did send
Yeah.
it today. He
Yeah.
sent it all of us today, with the 3 on it.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was in
And
the
I-
shared folder too.
Yeah,
so
no,
it's
so I
fine.
don't know where that came from.
Okay, me neither, but this
That's
is
not
what
what
we'll
we're
use.
talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I guess, do we want to, have a quick conversation about, that we can communicate to Prem, what is it we want feedback on from these 2, right? Not just, hey, do you like this more, but.
It sounds like they've already kind of said that's what they
They
do.
have a
I mean,
system for that, and I think only, unless we don't like what he shares with us, then we can ask him to do something
yeah, I
differently.
think didn't he say he would put together like a draft of how it would go out
Correct.
Yeah.
before, so people get a chance to look at that and comment.
Right, but it was, so it was only gonna be, I guess, so I'm just working through it in my mind, if it's, who's the survey going out to?
He said faculty and staff.
Faculty and
That's what he
staff.
said.
So that's a limited distribution. So,
Correct. Just-
so we could not, all of us, provide feedback on it.
No, I think at most, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is Jim's his primary interface. Jim's heard, sort of the thought process we had. I think let Jim work with Prem to make sure that those
Okay.
thought processes are incorporated in that communication. And
Okay.
And I heard did he say what he said the other night to all of us, or was it just in response to somebody's question? Somebody asked him, how are you gonna do this? And I remember being comfortable with his answer. He said there's just like two or three questions. He said it's not a million questions,
Yeah.
but it's more than choose A, choose B.
Right.
There's
So,
a
so,
little-
yes, he did say that, but I think what we want to make sure is if there's anything that we want to glean out of it,
Yeah.
that's communicated to him,
That's right.
so they
Yeah.
can
And
construct
that's what
it.
right. So, and that's the email this morning.
So what I didn't remember is that the first distribution was faculty and staff,
Correct.
not community at large.
Right.
Is that
Correct.
Not
Okay.
yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And admin at large, he said. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, great. Thank
Everybody's
you.
comfortable with this next step?
I will make sure he gets that then.
Looking forward to
tonight.
seeing the feedback, see what people think.
Excellent.
Ask them if they like the period at the beginning.
What's that? Ask if you like what?
The period at
Is
the
that
beginning.
really bothering you?
Is there an extra?
Okay, good.
We'll
Awesome.
see.
Thank you.
It's just like,
Yeah, well, that's why we're giving options.
Yeah, good.
That's-
Well, and that's why
It's a
one of the
little
things
bit of a
I mentioned
Oh,
when I
that.
provided feedback was, a lot of them didn't put, to be concise, and they didn't put that lead in of the Ashland Public School. It was like, they just started with a model district, that whatever, and then you can have whatever introduction to it you want, right? But to start it at the a model district as opposed to APS, Ashland Public, all the lead in, but.
All right.
And maybe the next iteration will make it shorter.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Yeah, shorter's always better. but-
Okay.
I
School
lost
choice
my agenda.
allocations?
Yes, so each year, we have to come before the board to allocate to specific departments as well as buildings, the school choice funds that we have talked about during the budgeting process of last year. And so this is just our annual time to allocate per each building. And in your packet, you'll notice that it's broken out by each building. So a total of, comes out to about $153,000. In addition to, we've got a couple other smaller items in there for some additional paper and high school cameras. So we're just looking for that approval. Nothing has changed in terms of the amounts, so do you want me to read them, or are you comfortable with, it's consistent with years past?
Is the cameras replacements or expansion of cameras, like new?
so what happened with that?
Yeah, Chris, Mike, please, sorry, thanks.
So in fiscal '22, we had an allocation. We intended on taking delivery of those products in fiscal 2022. We didn't get but we had ordered them and everything, so it's more of just an accounting shift. We didn't recognize it in fiscal '22, so we're trying to still have
Got it.
the funding
Got it.
this year.
Perfect.
We have a motion? Unless anybody.
I don't have the form of it.
I mean, it's either you want to read it or as presented, whatever
I
you
can
want.
do whatever you want. Move to approve the FY '23 school choice allotments as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Paul? Aye. Aaron? Mark?
Aye.
Aye.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
that passes.
Probably didn't need that form to be able to make that motion.
No,
The
probably not.
AMS Art Club stipend adjustment?
Chris?
So the AMS Art Club already exists. When the stipend was approved previously, it was on a different ratio. The ratio, I believe, and I can look,
I
but
got it,
it was
0.75, yeah.
0.75. The Art Club is now a year-round art club, so it's, the request is a 1.0 ratio, so there's a small differential in the stipend.
About $358.
I move to present the amended stipend as presented.
Well, Paul, you haven't had a chance to move or second yet.
I seconded the last one. What are you talking
All
about?
right.
I'll second again.
All in favor, Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Excuse me. Aye.
Aye. And then the superintendent's update?
Yeah, so just quickly, I always say that, right?
Yeah.
So, thank you, Michael. Monday we do not have school. We'll be celebrating Diwali. We have a couple things that are coming out in an email to the community. A few of you, and I want to give Chris a lot of credit for the frustration that he's been dealing with in terms of our transportation and our bus GPS system. And I'll be sending an email out. There's still a lot of work to be done with this. We had hoped that we might be able to onboard and roll it out by October 1. Clearly that didn't happen. But we're not going to roll something out where it's going to create more problems than it fixes, which is allowing families to be able to accurately monitor when buses are coming and leaving and dropping their kids off. So that's a pretty important email because I know families are emailing me routinely like, hey, Jim, what are we doing with this? And, again, we don't want to roll something out that's going to cause more headache and solve problems. So that's one thing that'll be focused on. Two, ESMER's been working, with, the logos and the branding, and we're trying to narrow down how we're going to focus on a couple things. Maybe create a few immediate logos that folks can use and clean them up a little bit until we have a larger scale, if you will, of making sure that we have appropriate feedback, things of that nature. So Kristen Brandt, who's been great, she's working with us to help us clean some things up. So that'll be coming out as well over the next few weeks. I'm excited. Mike and I and Esmer and Christy Arnold met, a couple days ago. We are in the process of starting to create a opportunity for our English language families to come together and create a couple of events. We're thinking of doing these quarterly. Esmer's put together a survey that we're going to send out to the community where folks who have various language skills that might be willing to volunteer their time to come in while we have an event to help us translate and really participate, and that'd be great. I think we can even get an opportunity for our kids to get some community service hours and things of that nature. So there's some really exciting stuff happening as it relates particular to our communication and our branding and our logoing. There's a training next week or 2 weeks for our staff principals on SMORE and Canva to work through getting our weekly newsletters to be consistent and concise and look the same. So I want to give her a shout out for the work that she's been doing behind the scenes with that. So, and that's it.
Jim, you had talked previously.
Yep.
You had talked previously about potentially a student contest in regards to the logo.
Yeah. So there's two components to this, right? I mean, we want to have something in place now that folks know what they're doing. If we're going to change our logo, that's a longer term process and discussion to ensure that we do it the right way. So we already have a couple logos. Let's clean those up first and use those, and then lay a foundation for what we're going to do in the future. I think that just makes good sense. Otherwise, we're going to have people still running around doing what they want.
Right.
So I think our initial take, Esmer, if you're listening there, our initial take is to get something squared away now, and then come back and say, hey, what do you want us to do as a board, but as a community, and how we're going to go ahead and deal with this problem.
We need a stopgap, because right now
Correct.
we have
Yep.
groups going off, creating their own, getting trademark infringements on everything else.
Yep.
We want to stop that, but the thing we can provide them today isn't ideal for lots of different reasons. So to get something that's workable today to prevent that while we pursue a long-term strategy, right?
It struck me as I was at it's one of the last home football games. Like, you look at the football field, it's just got a blue A, right? Even our football field doesn't align with anything else that we use.
Block A.
Right, it's block A. I don't know what's on the floor of the gym. I haven't looked at that or thought about it critically. same with
just
middle
there
school.
today.
Is there
Nothing.
something?
There isn't anything on the gym,
There's
right?
nothing.
That's easy to fix.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Right,
it
yeah.
just, I was like, oh
There's
my
nothing.
God, this is gonna be a lot bigger
Right.
than just like,
That's
what are
correct.
we putting on uniforms?
Well, but it, you know, even for that, when we have discussions about Mendez.
Right.
We've had those discussions, and initially, there was talk about, an Ashland A on the clock faces in all the rooms, and I'm like, no.
Now, until we know what
because-
the A is gonna look like.
Right.
Right, because we don't, even if we had it today, you know, once you do it, then you might rebrand 10 years from now or
Yeah.
whatever, and now you have these
Right.
antiquated things, so you'd be very intentional about where those things are, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can just give you a real quick, I think it's, literally, I'll take 30 seconds.
Sure.
So if you think about, things that these are conversations we're having, right? I mean, thinking about the logo itself, how do we clean it up a little bit? And again, nothing here is in stone. These are just conversations we're having. How do we clean it up? Are there options? Look at all the different logos these are just a few that are out there right now,
Yeah.
that currently exist. And we want to make sure as we go through this process that we're doing what we can to limit the myriad of
Right.
A's, colors, clocks, and things of that nature. So,
Yeah.
so there's a lot being done behind the scenes. And again, I just want to say thank you to Esmer. She's working hard with this. So, and that is it. I guess the last thing would be our next meeting is scheduled for the Thursday that we're down. It always happens, the first Thursday we're down on the Cape. We do have town meeting on the 16th of November. I think it's the 16th.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
Do we want to consider it? We do have a couple field trips that probably need to meet the school committee, excuse me, policy of timing that probably need to be approved. Excuse me. And, do we want to maybe put a placeholder the night of town meeting where we might have a couple things that we just need to have approved?
Yeah, we've done that in the past, just have like a
Yep.
15-minute or 30-minute.
And then we
Yeah.
wouldn't meet the 17th either?
No, our next meeting wouldn't be until the 17th.
Right.
Where it's a full business meeting.
So-
It's one day. You're right.
Yeah,
Good point, Mark.
that's-
I was thinking, I was thinking it was a week later.
I
was thinking it was a week later.
Yeah, you're right. So
Fair
we're-
enough. We
we're
don't
good on
need
the
it.
17th.
We're good.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I put that C in your mind, because I
Yep.
asked if
Yep.
there was anything we needed
That's right.
to do before town meeting.
We do not.
Okay.
That is correct. We don't. No, sorry. I was thinking our next business meeting was the following week, but that's Thanksgiving. So,
We could do that.
whatever. We're good. So, perfect. Thanks. I'm done.
Mike, do you have a report?
Just a few things. This past Friday, on the 14th, a group of Ashland staff met with the Decisions at Every Turn Coalition for the annual fall retreat. Thanks to Kristen French, who's the director of the Decisions at Every Turn. She puts this on together each year, and it's an opportunity for school staff to get together with community members. Chief Rossi was in attendance. Just great conversations. We talked about the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey results, looked at some of that data, and really talked about what we can do as a community to help our community at large be more informed about making great decisions. And really is, it's a wonderful organization, so I want to just give them a shout out and thank them for putting on this yearly fall retreat. So it's a great event. Our first year staff had our second monthly meeting yesterday, thanks to Jane Guiney, who's leading that charge. It was a great conversation with staff. We focused on talking to parents and having difficult conversations with parents and making sure that we're also having positive conversations with parents. We did some wonderful role-playing about conferences, because our conferences are coming up, particularly for the elementary school kids, the first week in November. So we wanted to make sure that our staff is getting prepared for those. Our year 2 staff, as you know, I talked about this last week, had our first meeting. The next group is going to be meeting in Milford next week, so we're looking forward to that for our year 2 folks that are going to be collaborating with the Milford and Mendon Upton Regional School District staff. This year, I hope to provide you with continued information about the work that we're doing with our APs and our deans. I think I've talked to you about some of that work that we're doing, and really taking a look at our district curriculum accommodation plan and our building curriculum accommodation plan. And I wasn't sure if I had talked about that publicly yet, but I wanted to make sure I gave some credit to the assistant principals, deans, for the work that they're doing in that. And finally, I think they had another game today, but last week I had the privilege of watching our unified basketball team play. And I know that, I think that a couple of you went today to see them again. And I just wanted to congratulate all the students and staff members who are a part of that. Particularly thank you to Holly LeBlanc and Crystal Lipinski, who are coaching the team, and Brittany for bringing that program to our district. It just really is an amazing opportunity for our student population to get together and compete with some of our most unique learners, and just watching them out there is just, it has honestly been, watching them last week was the highlight of my year. So I wanted to make sure we acknowledge that wonderful work being done there.
Thanks, Mike. Warrant approvals?
1 second. All right, between October 7th, 2022 and October 20th, 2022, I, Paul Kendall, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $462,182.25. This includes general fund expenses of $259,820.74, revolving expenses of $201,910.55, and grant expenses of $450.96.
Thank you. Okay, anybody on the October 6th, 2022 minutes? Motion?
Move to approve the October
Six.
6, 2022 minutes.
Second.
All in favor, Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aye. Gifts and donations?
There are none this time?
Okay. Committee reports of activities, any member updates?
Hey, Jim, can you make me a co-host?
Yep, absolutely.
So we did have a building committee meeting on Tuesday, and so I did share on the Facebook page, let's see, some photos from our site walk that we had beforehand, so putting that up there now. So the photos start, where I'm standing now is, if you're looking at the front of the building, it is the southwest corner of the gym, so that first front left corner of the gym looking into the gym space. So the corner that is directly in front of us would be the entrance. Through that wall on the left is the cafeteria and kitchen area. And the main entrance to the school would be behind that wall on the right-hand side, or on the front right-hand side.
Is the floor dirt?
Nope.
Or is it's poured concrete?
Nope, that's a slab, yeah.
I can't tell from the picture, sorry. There, now I can tell.
So this is now the gymnasium. If you look at the left side of the screen, those crosshatched beams, that was the same crosshatched beams that are over here. So if I went diagonally through that straight ahead, now I'm looking back into the cafeteria, and the kitchen would be straight behind there on the left-hand side. The stage is where that wood raised platform is. This is the main entrance. And then off to the left is the admin suite.
You can see, Paul, identifying the right there, where the clock is.
Yeah, so right in front of the square you see outside, that is going to be the clock tower. And I think you can see my screen.
Yeah.
So
Is this like is the purple sheetrock or is that insulation?
Oh,
it's sheathing.
yeah, it's not sheeting.
It's not painted yet.
Outside.
Yeah, so what you're seeing there is exterior, past that wall right there. So this is now basically where, if you see where the yellow GP piece of styrofoam is, now I'm looking back into the building from in the admin suite, looking back in the building. This is from the second floor, southwest corner, looking into the interior courtyard.
That's not cement.
That's dirt.
That's dirt.
This is up where the media center is on the second floor, looking down, so you'll see the stage area there. So now you're looking into the cafeteria from upstairs. And if you look to the left, that where you see that big cutout, that is part of. So that's where the entrance is, and that's one of the ways that natural light was going to get into the cafeteria.
That's beautiful.
This, if I turned around towards the front of the building, this is the exit of the media center out onto the exterior classroom that sits over top of the admin suite. So that was the doorway right here. So this is in the corner, not all the way into the corner, because this is where they had it blocked off because they use it to load things up here. But so this is the exterior classroom space. This piece of metal here is the clock tower. So that'll be precast concrete and everything surrounding it. This is just turning a little bit to the right, so the outdoor space comes right along the media center up to the corridor that links to the pod that's on the right-hand side. This is in that pod we just saw, looking across to the other pod that's on the east. The parking lot would be to the right here, so where you see the trailer and the other things would be our other outdoor learning area. $5 for anybody that can identify what I took a picture of.
That's a heat pump of some sort.
Nope.
No?
This is prefabricated bathroom plumbing. So they prefabricate it and then they bolt it to the floor and they build the walls around it because they can do it faster, better quality control.
Wow. Do you have any idea why the copper piping is so large on the middle section then? Is it sorry, never mind.
Are you really asking that question?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, I'm a nerd.
Just
And
make a little
water flow,
picture
pressure,
of it on the computer.
there's lots of reasons for it.
It's
So
like there's no good answer to that question.
this looks like it's part of the building, but it's not. This is the mock-up, so it sits, the main entrance is kind of over here. So this is off to the east of the building. The geothermal is behind me here, but this kind of gives you the idea of this is the brick that we're using. Here are some of the precast panels. So
You call that a mock-up?
Yeah.
right.
So what, yeah, what's the purpose?
So the purpose of a mock-up, is they do this on all projects, is this is where you take the materials, you show constructability, you work through the process. Because what you have here is you have masons, you have metal workers, you have all these different things, and you've had the designers put together something. So they need to come here, all the subs come here, they work on constructability. The building inspector can come and you prove that you've done it this way, and then you go ahead and do it on. And in other times, when you had more flexibility on when you could order things and not lead times, it might also be where we would put different brick on there and potentially and see how, but with, the brick, oddly enough, was one of the things where we had to decide on that a long time ago because it was all of a sudden, I don't know, 20 weeks out or something like that for brick. It was some crazy amount of time where it's typically readily available. So this is the mock-up panel. So that's what the brick is going to look like. There's going to be different ways they do the brick. So there'll be ways they lay it and they stagger the depth of the brick for texture, or they, like you'll see the soldering on top where it's vertical. So there's different things that'll be part of the design. But this is the color brick we have and the precast paneling.
The nice thing, Mark, too, with the mock-up is that it allows our project manager to see everything and say, hey, we don't like that quality of work, and come back and redo it. And it's actually, it's nice. It's one of my favorite spots to go, just to see, each week, they're like, oh, we're gonna do this on the on the mock-up.
Yeah, so the designer gets to go there, the subs work there, construction manager, our owner's project manager, and our building inspector can go there and, see it done, confer, say, okay, this is, and set an expectation. Now, when they go and they use different fasteners, like, whoa, what are you doing? You can't do that. So it's, it just works on constructability and makes sure that what we get on the building is gonna be correct.
Awesome.
So if I turn around and take a picture, this is looking, so current building's off to the right, Concord Street's straight ahead. This is where the parking lot will be. This is one of the rows and circuits for our geothermal wells. So they're working on some of the last few circuits of this now, and they'll be paving this, getting a binder coat down, hopefully in the next month or so.
When's the building expected to be kind of sealed up?
So there's two different types of sealed up. There's construction sealed up, meaning that they can proceed with finishes, different things that need to be protected from the elements. And then there is, final, it's tight.
Yeah, I'm really talking about
December
the first one.
is I think, believe when they're gonna be construction tight, and probably March timeframe would be final envelope sealing, I think. So that's the kind of the timeframe.
Amazing how fast it moves, even though it takes a long time to do. And everything is on target and schedule and,
Well,
I know.
So I answered a Facebook question about this too. So the substantial completion date is still, we're on track for that. There's lots of moving things, and individually things have ebbed and flowed, and things are behind, or and they play that shell game, right? So for instance, last weekend I approved Saturday work for the site contractor to do work on subsurface infiltration system. The reason I allowed it was because typically they would have already done this work, but this was one where, because of all the budgetary things we were doing with value engineering, we made modifications which moved this infiltration system from where it was originally slightly. And because of that, we didn't have test pits from that exact location to get where the seasonal high groundwater is. And because seasonal high groundwater was about 8 inches or 10 inches higher than anticipated in that area, it needed to be redesigned. So it didn't get done earlier. But now, as you can see, there's not much space to work when you need to excavate and do things with all these other contractors on site. So that's something that, all right, if I said no, it has a substantive impact on the schedule and potentially impacting other trades. So that component was behind, but to have it not ripple and impact other things, we did allow them some Saturday work to do that. So the answer is our target date hasn't changed. How's that?
I'll take it.
And because I can tell you that I think I mentioned before, we had one of the last emergencies was our main electrical switch panel for the electrical service that comes into the building. When that was, we paid for it. When it was released to the factory, they updated the lead time from 24 to 48 to 49 weeks, or 44 to 44 weeks or something like that, which put it into getting it in June, which wouldn't help us very much, right? So the team had to basically redesign a lot of things, and so going with 4 different smaller panels and that are a little bit more readily available, or the lead times were much better. So those will be on site, I believe, February. So just an example of no one sees it, but these things are occurring all the time. They don't normally happen, but we're still seeing just these crazy, all of a sudden drop, it's crazy. You gave us this time frame and you did doubled it. So that wouldn't, and unfortunately, the public safety building had some different things, but they had the luxury of not needing that building on a particular date, and they could move it. If we don't hit our date, we don't open, because we need that summer, if you recall, to work on the front of the building and get the entrance done and the loop road. So the current building has to be demolished at its ends, and do that over the summer. So we can't miss that date. So it's a loaded question when you ask me whether everything, you said, is everything on time? I'm like,
I should just say, is the building on time? That's what.
Yeah.
the overall project is still tracking to the date. I'll put it that way.
And, Paul, I don't know if you have any more photos, but part of it is too, we're going to have a conversation about our calendar, right? I mean, for the 23-24 school year. And what does that look like? And, just put that in the back of your head somewhere, because depending upon how the process goes in the project,
Every day matters.
right.
Every
So,
day we
because
can
it
push.
could negatively impact what our calendar looks like next year significantly.
So it's just then we're past most of the risks from an unknown current conditions kind of thing, with the exception of the demolition and abatement of the current building. As it relates to I think we're probably not too big of a risk for that summer, because again, that's only the ends of the building that need to go away for the completion of the front entrance and the loop road around the building. But yeah, so we've talked quite a little bit, because the substantial completion date is July 17th. I'm going to be continuing talking to the team, see if we can get that earlier at all, because it's tight. It's tight. And so they've asked us, we've talked to them about what does our start date look like, in the fall, and can it be after Labor Day? Can it be, stuff like that, because every day is going to matter.
All right then.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
Questions? Any other updates?
I would just say that I wasn't able to attend today because I had a work commitment, but the high school site council had its first meeting today, and I look forward to getting a bit of an update from Ms. St. Kerr, and then being able to report out on that next time.
Excellent. All right, I think we're good to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.